So, one of the questions we hear a lot from investors, especially people who are just starting to get into it, looking at real estate investing, is there's a lot of different ways to invest in real estate, right? There's turnkey, there's BRRRR, there's retail, there's JVs, flicks and flips, and everyone has an opinion on what is the best way to invest in real estate. So, I want to kind of slow that down and talk about what each of those actually involves and how people should really be thinking about them to choose the right one for their situation. So, let's just start with turnkey, right? So when
Yeah.
people hear turnkey, what does that actually mean, Nate? What does that term mean for real estate?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to define turnkey above and beyond just the real estate aspect as well. And this is actually something John and I used to talk about a lot. John used to have a great comparison to remember your grocery store comparison, John?
Oh yeah.
What turnkey investing was? That's always a
Yeah.
good one. One of my favorite things to tell investors is there's a million ways to make money in real estate, right? So we're if you're making money in real estate in some aspect, whether it's private money lending or hard money lending or syndications or turnkey or BRRRR, whatever it is, great job.
Yep.
Like we want you guys to make money in investment real estate. I always say turnkey is very specific, right? It's not for every type of investor, right? To me, do we work with plenty of investors that have maybe built a career on BRRRR or built a super large portfolio? Absolutely. We work with high level investors that have owned 50, 60 doors that are tired of being their own property managers. And they're like, hey, I want to get out of this and just go to something simpler and have somebody else do it for me, right? But if I was to give you just a kind of a step-by-step definition of turnkey, the first thing is turnkey real estate is everything's done for you, what I call from the front end to the back end of the transaction. Okay. So our teams and our partners in like specific markets, let's talk about one of those popular markets out there, Memphis, Tennessee, right? Everyone talks Memphis, Tennessee. We have specific teams in those markets that will go out and they'll find the real estate for you, right? They'll find it, they'll rehab it for you, and then they will manage it for you, right? So every aspect of the transaction is taken care of for you, right? See what I'm saying here is you don't have to go out and find the real estate. You don't have to go out and find your contractor, and you don't have to go out and find your property manager. Like we've done all that for you. That to me, that's the real estate side of turnkey is the from the acquisition to the rehab to the property management, it's done for you. Now, above and beyond that, to me, like when I say turnkey, that also means we have lenders for you. We have asset protection specialists for you, LLC protection specialist, right? Everything is there for you as an investor to build a portfolio, and you don't have to piecemeal everything together, right? I think so many investors I work with will call me, yeah, I've owned some real estate. I had a real estate agent sell me a property in Timbuktu one time. And they didn't tell me it needed $20,000 worth of rehab work, so I owned it a couple of years, and then I had to replace the roof, and then I had to replace the HVAC. But I self-managed it, but then I found a property manager. And so, like a lot of investors I talk with, when I say, hey, so you've owned real estate, how did it go? It's like, I didn't really like it. But this turnkey thing sounds really nice because it sounds like you guys and your teams do all the work for me, right? So, turnkey is designed to take your time back, get into something that's predictable and stable where we and our teams do all the research and the work for you, again, from the acquisition to the rehab to the management, and you can sit back and collect your rent checks. We used to call it back in the day mailbox money. This is before everything started getting like way more electronic. Now you can get your rent sent to you directly to a business checking account or a personal checking account wherever you want your rents sent to you, right? So John and I can live in California or Florida or wherever it is, and we can own real estate in Little Rock, Arkansas or Memphis, Tennessee, right? And we can get our rents sent to us. So I guess if we're talking about who that's for, to me, Turkey real estate's for anybody that wants to buy investment properties, right? It is not for someone who's trying to chase the highest and biggest and baddest ROIs in the face of the planet, right? We'll just be direct. We're not for you if you're trying to chase 30% cash on cash returns. That's not what we do, right? We're not buying a property for $30,000, throwing a renter in there and then selling it to you. There's other companies out there that will do that for you. So turnkey is for the investor that's looking for stability and predictable, cash on cash returns and property management, and ideally property management that's good, right? Hopefully
Okay.
that makes a little bit more sense. A little
Yes, it's not.
long-winded there, but I've talked about this for 15 years, and so that to me that's what turnkey entails.
Yes, you said it's pretty hands off, right? Like everything's really done for them. What exactly is the investor responsible for? Is it truly they just
Great question.
show up and they're done?
Yeah, great question. So it is hands off at a certain
Mhm.
point, right? I always say the very first part of buying investment real estate is kind of a whirlwind, right? You're talking to us. You're getting pre-approved for financing if you're doing financing. You're opening up LLCs. You're signing purchase and sale agreements. You're signing property management agreements, right? You're getting ready to own this investment, right? That takes work, right? There's going to be a process of time and commitment and education on the front side of this, right? And yeah, if we're putting in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it is, that's good. You want to educate yourself and spend the time on spending or investing rather, and get that word out of my mouth, investing 20, 30, 40, $50,000 into a piece of real estate, right? Now, once you own the asset and the renter's in place, then it's, hands off. Now, do we recommend once a month going into your back end portal and checking your rents being collected? Yes. Be hands on, right? Be an owner. Check to make sure your rents are collected. Did you have any maintenance, right? Frank, this happens to me all the time. Like I actually had to call the client recently who literally said to me, "I don't know what rents were collected. I don't know how the asset's doing." I'm like, "Okay, let's log into your portal with your property manager and check it, right?" So yes, be involved. Check your portal once a month, see how the asset's doing for you. But as far as, getting leases signed and putting a new tenant in place and, having to do the renovation or the property turn when the tenant moves out, that is all hands off for you. That's all handled for you by the company or our teams in that market, right? But yes, is there some work involved? Of course. I mean, you're investing in something. Do you guys log into your Fidelity account every month and check to see how your portfolio is doing? Great. You can do that for your property too. Make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah,
The other, it's like you said, right? Turnkey sounds like it's a bit more hands-off, a bit more passive. Obviously, you want to watch your investments, just like any investment you make, and
correct.
have some involvement there. What about like John, from your standpoint, like the BRRRR strategy? We hear a lot about that too. What does that really require from somebody? What's involved in the executing the BRRRR strategy?
When we think about the BRRRR strategy, an investor is making a decision, right? There's a decision made with every investment that we make, and it's a time versus money decision, right? And the beautiful part about real estate is we have the opportunity to sacrifice our time if we don't have a whole lot of money, or if we have money to buy our time back, essentially. So, from a turnkey standpoint, where we are is we're saying, hey, we're going to uh, reduce how much time, effort, and energy we put into real estate investing. We're going to be doing that by using our own money to put down payments on properties. Whereas in the BRRRR strategy, most investors are saying, man, don't have a whole lot of money. I don't have 35, $40,000 to stroke a check for a down payment. So I'm going to need to make up for that by putting in time, finding a property that needs repairs, right? Hiring contractors, managing those contractors, bringing on a property manager, getting property inspections done, and then, going through that whole 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 month process to the point where you've created equity, right? You've added value to this home by doing a renovation project, right? You bought it for 100, you put in 30, you're all in for 130, but now it's worth 160 because you put in time, effort, energy. Now, instead of writing a check for the down payment, you've built it into the equity through your time, effort, and energy. And that's what the BRRRR strategy does. So what we do is we say, hey, we found the property. We found the construction team. The construction is done. The inspections have been completed, but you can still have your own inspection. We've found and vetted and hired the property manager. We've got a tenant placed. We're producing cash flow, right? You're just coming in and verifying everything we're sharing with you, and then buy that house with a down payment. So we're saving that time side of things with a turnkey investment versus a BRRRR investment.
Yes, it sounds like there's a bit more on the BRRRR side, maybe more time, more involvement, a little bit more risk, maybe better
Yep.
if you have on my start, whereas, turnkey's better for a bit more passive approach and not taking on that risk. What about buying something retail? You go out, you find a property yourself, you buy it from an agent, and you manage the property independently.
Yeah. You'll see a lot of real estate agents out there actually marketing, this is a great turnkey rental property, right? 95% of the time, nothing coming directly off the MLS is turnkey, no matter how good of condition it is, right? Was it just freshly renovated? Does it have a new roof, water heater, HVAC system, paint, flooring, updated plumbing and electrical? Probably not, right? But it's a clean home that ultimately probably needs $5,000 to $10,000 worth of work, right? So, that retail scenario is similar to turnkey, but you'll likely be coming out of pocket more money, right?
Mhm.
Because you're still buying a home that's being sold at retail, right? There's no value add to increase the value of the home. So you're going to put a down payment down on that home. You're going to put 20 or 25% down. And then in addition to that, you're going to have to go and find a property management company. The first thing they're going to do is walk the property, evaluate the home, and tell you, okay, here's the $5,000 or $10,000 worth of work that still needs to be done in order to provide a rent ready status to market the property. So in addition to the down payment, you're out another three, five, $10,000 to get the property rent ready. So retail, it's available, but again, there's still extra cash. I would say probably retail's the worst strategy because you're just spending unneeded money, right? At least you get the benefit of building equity with the BRRRR strategy. Turnkey, you don't have to put in any extra money after you buy it. Retail is like, kind of a curse of both worlds.
That's good. That's actually kind of was going to be my next question. And like, how would you,
Yeah.
how are we going to compare these three? These are kind of the three main strategies people use when they're looking at long-term rental investing. Like, we touched on some of the trade-offs, right? Time versus money, but what other trade-offs are there between those three strategies? Let's see.
Yeah, one of the things I'll bring up, guys, this whole conversation is good because it reminds me of something we talk about a lot. There's passive deals and there's active deals, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, the biggest thing we're talking about is time freedom here, right? Turnkey real estate is, except for the first part of acquiring the asset and doing the work and getting ready to buy it, is completely passive, right?
Yeah.
Are there those one-off scenarios every once in a while where as a passive investor you have to step in and do a little bit more work? Sure. Like John and I have seen everything under the sun. We just had a house catch on fire in Memphis. Like, do we have to step in and like look at insurances and stuff like that? Of course, right? We're still owners, right? But turnkey real estate is passive. It's designed to own two, four, six, 10 doors, 15 doors. Some investors we know own 30, 40, 50 doors, and they're getting their rent check sent to them. BRRRR and retail to me are very active. Like you are the one putting in the energy and the time and the effort to analyze that deal, talk to the agent, find your own contractors, find your own property managers, do the extra work on the back end of that deal. So we're kind of obviously we're being a little bit redundant here in this conversation, but it's to me it's really just comes back to time versus money. Like turnkey is designed to take your time back if you have the capital base to go out and invest, in deals with your own capital. The other two strategies can be powerful. BRRRR can be extremely powerful. Retail is like, retail to me, if someone tells me, "Hey Nate, we review this asset for me. I found this property in, Timbuktu. Apparently, that's the word I'm using now for rental markets. And they're selling it retail and needs 15 grand to work, and it's going to break even. Normally, not the asset I'm going to recommend someone buy. So that's what I
What
would say
about,
about the kind of the differences there.
yeah,
Yeah.
what about from like a risk management standpoint or like risk trade-off between particularly like Burr and Turnkey?
From a risk standpoint, BRRRR is obviously going to be riskier, right? Because the three big variables that you need to contend with is one, the construction, right? Are we going, is the construction going to, go over budgets? Are we going to be able to properly manage our contractor? Is the contractor going to do what they say they're going to do? Right. That's kind of risk number one. Risk number two is, we estimated based on, comparable sales and, really quality educated guess what the home's going to be worth once it's renovated. Right. And if we don't hit that number, if an appraiser doesn't give us that future value, that after repair value that we estimated, then you might be stuck coming out of pocket money anyways, right? The upside is, you might even get more money back, but the risk is that it doesn't appraise for what you hoped for. And then number three is, does it rent for what you hoped it was going to rent for based on your analysis, right? Those three risks are all mitigated from a turnkey standpoint. The upside with BRRRR is, there's a good chance that you may have the opportunity to have some built-in equity, right? The downside is if any of those three things go wrong, you potentially could be in a very negative cash flow or just negative financial situation, right? Where turnkey kind of nips all those in the bud right out of the gate.
Yeah,
Is that, oh, go ahead, Nate. Sorry.
I was going to say, Johnny, bring up the good point. I mean, people ask this all the time, but what are my risks? What am I not asking? Right. Well, the
Yeah.
biggest risks in investment real estate there's two, right? It's vacancy and maintenance. And you are guaranteed to have both of those at some point, whether you do retail or turnkey, right? I think turnkey, the numbers are in our favor. You're buying an asset that's been renovated, right? You're working with a property manager that's professionally vetted and does a very good job on the management side. So you're mitigating your risk by buying a turnkey asset. Does it mean you're never going to put money into it? Absolutely not. You will, right? When a tenant moves out and there's some stuff that needs to be done to that property to upkeep it, that is your job as an investor to upkeep that property every 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
We talked about accountability on the first episode. That's the accountability of being a real estate investor, right? I always tell individuals, don't come back to us and be upset if you have $1,000 turnover cost on a piece of real estate. That's part of investing, right? And the long-term benefits far outweigh that $1,000 you're going to put into keeping your rental property moving, right? But as far as the trade-offs, turnkey is we're mitigating as much risk as possible, right?
So, I think we kind of cover the difference there between those two about risk shifting and time versus money. So it sounds like there's maybe not a best strategy, particularly between BRRRR and turnkey, but how should investors look at it rather than saying this is the strategy everyone should do? How should they think about, well, which one actually fits me?
Yeah, I mean, great question. This is why we jump on the phones and we have these conversations and we talk about what are your goals, right? What are you looking to accomplish with a real estate purchase, right? If I'm on the phone with somebody or if I'm talking to a client and it's unrealistic expectations and it doesn't really meet a turnkey criteria, then we'll be honest with you, right? It might not be for you because you're looking for higher yield, higher risk type investments, right? One of my favorite ones is if I get on the phone with somebody or if I'm talking to an investor and they've already done a bunch of their own deals and they're successful at it. I always like to ask, well, what's your goal here? Because you've clearly done your own deals and you're successful at it. Is there a reason you want to look at turnkey? Oh yeah, I want some time back. Okay, great. That's
Mhm.
that's a that's a bell that goes off my head that goes, okay, great. So this would fit for you, right? So owning some of your own deals, but also getting some of your time back with turnkey. That makes sense. That aligns
Yep.
with what you're trying to do. That we're looking for you as an investor. That it's in alignment with the turnkey process, right? So there is no best or worst option to purchase, right? And that's what we talk about, how we're going to be transparent and real with you guys. Go make money in real estate, right? We don't
Yeah.
care how you do it. We have a very specific product and a very specific, process with our partners in the markets that we're in that most likely will fit your needs in some way in some capacity, right? So
Hmm.
to me, it's always goal alignment. There's no right or wrong, best or worst. It's just what are you looking for? So
Yeah, I think some other things that play into that too, right? Might be you talked about risk tolerance, about time availability, right? Do you already have the skills to this? Have you done it before versus you're brand new? But I think there's other things too, like where are you at in your career, right? Do you have a high paying, you're a busy professional with a high paying job and you're in a great spot with your career and you're trying to shift some of that money?
yeah,
Where do you live and where are you comfortable investing? I know we talked about that a little bit on episode one, but if like you have to maybe be comfortable not doing this in your backyard. If you go with
Yeah.
turnkey, if you
correct.
want to do it in your backyard, maybe you need to do BRRRR. So yeah, there's a lot I think that goes into picking right what strategy fits you and your individual goals versus just saying everyone should do this.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, so given everything we just talked about, like where does turnkey tend to make the most sense? Like who does it help most? And on the contrary side, like where does it not? Who is it just the wrong fit for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
John.
can run with that one.
Yeah.
I mean, normally it makes sense for the busy professional or the business owner that wants to diversify their existing investment portfolio into real estates. They just don't have the time or the knowledge to go out there and make that happen on their own, right? We have so many investors, so many students that have old retirement funds that are just sitting on the sidelines and they're like, man, we want to invest in real estate, but we just don't know how to do that. Or they're getting their end of the year, beginning of the year bonus. And they're like, well, I don't want to go stick this in traditional investments because that's where the majority of my investment is. I want to get into uh, to rentals and owning real estate, but they just don't know how to. And, they're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week to begin with, and learning how to do the real estate game is just not an opportunity for them. So that's usually where turnkey comes into play, right? Nate and I always talk about, think about turnkeys like buying a blue chip stock, right?
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
We're not going to buy a turnkey rental property and retire from that in 6 months, right? Like it's just not going to happen,
Yep.
right? We buy it because we're diversifying our existing portfolio, right? That we have. We're going to set it, we're going to forget it, and just like pillar number three, right? Plan on holding this thing for 7, 10, 15 years. Pick your head up and go, wow, I've earned a consistent, you know, total return of 15% for the last 10 years. And now I got an extra few $100,000 in equity, right? Like that was sick, right? And then we can 1031 exchange it into five more houses, right? Or we can sell it, you turn it into a private money lender or whatever you want to do, right? So it's built for that person that's is looking at this as a long-term investment. They're busy, they have capital, they just don't know the next steps to get into real estate without spending 10, 20, 30 hours a week trying to figure it out. Right. That's who this is really meant for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. John, you stole my thunder, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Um, the first thing I thought about is, the long-term hold versus the short-term, right? Right now, a lot of people are into STRs, short-term rentals. A lot of people are trying to ride the wave of the market. Do I want to buy now and sell in 3 to 5 years, right? That would be great if you're in California or the West Coast or on coastal markets and cities, right? This is designed for someone who's okay holding the asset long term, right? 7, 10, 15 years, right? If you've listened to episode one, John talks, I love that. I love that he talks about this. No, typically you don't hold a rental property for 15, 20 years and end up upset, right? Normally there's going to be some upside, there's going to be some equity, there's going to be some total return, some cash flow there for you, right? Turnkey is designed for that investor who wants to sit down and hold this property long term, kind of leave a legacy for family or kids, right? This is not buy, hold, and sell in 3 to 5 years. This is buy and hold long term, right? So that's how I would describe for someone if they're looking for that.
We're using Warren Buffett's strategy, right? Buy and hold it forever.
Yeah, correct. This is the Midwest. This is not where we are in San Diego, California. So
Um, so for somebody who's, maybe they're trying to pick between, BRRRR or turnkey, maybe they're kind of one of those people who's right in the middle, like I have a job, I make good money, I don't have a tons, just
Hmm.
kind of in between this, right? In the last episode, we had some pointed questions people need to sit down and ask themselves. So what's the one question people who are on the fence are trying to choose? What should they be asking themselves before deciding which
Yeah.
to go with?
yeah.
I think the, you know, easiest way to determine, do we go turnkey or do we do something like a burst strategy? It's going back to that time versus money equation, right? Do I have money? And if so, is time very important to me or limited? Right. And if so, turnkey is the direction, right? I have money for down payments. I don't have time to figure out real estate and all the ins and outs and hire contractors and property inspectors and property managers and manage projects. Turnkey is your goal, right? If you ask that question to yourself and you're like, I can make time because I don't have a whole lot of money and I don't have money to do down payments and I don't have the opportunity to scale as the years progress, then the burst strategy or something similar to that is probably going to be the route that you want to go in most cases.
Yeah, and I would pose a question to you and say this. Is it an or is it an and? Is it either or is it an and? I say this to a lot of investors, like, okay, you like both, you have the financial means to do both. Do both, right? If you want to, do you want to buy an investment property in Memphis, Tennessee with me, turnkey, and put a down payment down and see how that goes for you? Great. Awesome. And if you want to go out and you want to attempt this on your own and, buy a property off market, put the rehab into it and find the property manager and do all the work and compare and contrast, great, right? It doesn't have to be either or, it can be an and, right? So I will be honest with you and tell you it's going to be a lot more work for you to go out and
Yeah.
do it on your own, and there's more risk involved. Um, but yeah, it doesn't have to be a dichotomy, right? So if you're
Well, we
really
usually
on the
wind up
fence,
being the gateway drug, right?
yeah,
It's like we introduce them to a market, Memphis or St. Louis or Ohio, wherever, right? And they go and they buy a property with a turnkey provider, right? And they were thinking, do I do BRRRR? Do I do turnkey? And they wind up doing turnkey out of the gate. And then they learn a little bit about this market, right? It's enough to be dangerous, right? And they're like, oh, we can do this. Oh, we found the property manager because they, and then they do their first BRRRR property or something like that, and then they turn around and go, all right, so it's stabilized. It's with our property manager that I bought that turnkey property with, but holy shit, I'm not doing that again, right? So
yeah, I think it says volumes like when some of the wealthiest investors I know buy turnkey real estate, right? They might have attempted it or they might have gone out and tried to do it on their own, and it's the time factor.
yeah,
And so,
100%.
don't get this wrong that turnkey is only for the person that wants long term or doesn't want to lift a finger. I mean, there's plenty of high net worth individuals. I mean, we have a colleague. We'll keep the name. We'll keep it. We'll keep the anonymity in place. But we know people that literally have made careers off of working with people at Amazon or Google, like high net worth individuals that only take their bonuses and stuff like that and come in and buy turnkey because they don't want to go out. Could they make higher ROI somewhere? Sure. But they understand the value, right? Like higher net worth individuals understand the value of time versus money and not trying to just chase the highest yield possible, right?
Yeah, and these are people these are executives
Yeah.
at Google. Do you not think that they know the inner workings of like some of the biggest tech companies that are about to blow up and like what potentially could be investments, and they're opting like, nah, just save my money and buy, you know,
Yeah.
a single family home, right?
Sure.
Which is crazy to me to think, right? I'm like, man, if I had that insider information, but even for them, they're like, nah, it's not worth it.
It's value, right? People understand the value of a long-term portfolio, right? And multiple
Yeah,
doors. And, we're going to get into we'll get into the value and the profit centers and the strategies and other episodes about why someone like that would buy that many doors, right? And
yeah,
take their bonuses and buy investment properties versus just putting into higher risk, high yield stocks or, mutual funds or, investing in just tech companies and, higher net worth individuals. Obviously, they probably have money in a lot of places, right? But it
yeah,
still speaks volumes when I meet people that still want to buy that $175,000 home in Indianapolis, Indiana, right?
yeah.
That's actually a great segue because that is what our next episode is going to be on is how you make money in real estate, right? Beyond just cash flow, but
Yep.
break down those profit centers and so investors can better understand what those returns actually look like. So great little segue there, Nate.
I
And
love
thank
that.
you both so much.
Yeah, you got it, Amber. Thank you.
Absolutely. See you guys.
Take care, guys.